Alright, what do we got here? Trump meets Syria's attractive, tough president after lifting U.S. sanctions. Damn. Ahmed Al-Sharaa. Dude's being, getting that fucking good old Trump gluck gluck. That's crazy. What do we got here? What's this 31-second video?
How did you find the Syrian president?
Great. Great. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy. Strong path.
I have a question, okay? This is an immediate question. This is real quick. A real quick one, okay? Trump Tower Damascus. Real quick. Trump Tower Damascus. Tulsi Gabbard on suicide watch. But yeah, wait, hold on. Yeah, real quick. I wonder why. It couldn't be because of anything in particular as to why he might be saying these things about Ahmed Al-Sharaa. I guess all the Middle Eastern states and Gulf states, they figured out how to coddle to Trump properly. Just say like, hey, the free money and advertisements. Look at that, very cool and very good. How to appeal to Trump. It's way easier than you may think. Let's keep going. Donald Trump has met Syria's president Ahmed Al-Sharaa in Saudi Arabia, telling the former jihadist he had an extraordinary opportunity. Trump also said Washington is exploring normalizing ties with Damascus a day after an announcement that all U.S. sanctions on Syria would be lifted, which is a huge change. The U.S. president met Sharaa, a former militant who fought against U.S. forces in Iraq, had a $10 million U.S. bounty on his head until December 2024, alongside the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Oh, wait, he had a $10 million bounty as well? That's crazy. Hyperbole aside. For about half an hour before a conference of the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, as part of his 4-day visit to the Middle East. It was the first meeting between a U.S. and a Syrian president for 25 years and a key milestone for Syria's reintegration into the international arena after the toppling Bashar al-Assad's regime in 2024. Yeah, I'm not feeling great for the chances of the Syrian Democratic Forces or the Kurds, guys. I think it might be over for those guys. It's unfortunate how they basically got, completely fucked over by the West because they got no fucking support, basically. Because HTS is not great. They're Turkish-backed Syrian nationalists. They're not great. And we already have taken a look into some of the tensions that they're having with some of Syria's minority populations, like the Druze. Well, I mean, Israel's using them as an excuse basically to do imperialism, but whatever. Trump told reporters on board Air Force One after the meeting that Sharaa was a young, attractive guy, tough guy, strong past, very strong past, fighter. Sharaa, 42, later hailed Trump's decision to lift sanctions as a historic and courageous decision, which alleviates the suffering of the people, contributes to the rebirth, and lays the foundations for stability in the region. He's not wrong. This is if we're talking about this purely politically for Ahmed Al-Sharaa here, this is about as good as it fucking gets. Getting rid of the sanctions relief, he'll be able to participate now in terms of the international markets. GDP is probably going to go up. The fucking Syrian economy is probably going to improve significantly. He's probably going to get completely exploited and extorted by the Western powers and the International Monetary Fund and all that stuff. But hey, if we're talking purely politically in the short term, in terms of the benefit for the Syrian economy, this is a boon for him. Let's be honest here. In a late-night television address, he said, "Syrians, the road before us is still long. Today we begin the real work, with which modern Syria will be reborn." Keep in mind, a lot of the stuff that happened in Syria is a result of the French. Oh no, it wasn't the French. Yeah, it was the French in Syria. The French were in Syria. Yeah, you want to know why Syria got fucked up? Thank you. Well, World War One, collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and French colonization. One of the biggest reasons as to why Syria suffered quite a lot. Ordinary Syrians watched the images of their president standing beside the leaders of the U.S. and Saudi Arabia on their TV screens in amazement. For many, it was a sign that 15 years of international isolation could finally be coming to an end. Yeah, the Civil War has been going on for a while. But then again, that's just how, well, I'll be honest, just completely shit Bashar al-Assad was. And, guys, it turns out, like, if you want, like, economic success and stability, maybe you shouldn't, like, go all in on the Russians. I'm just saying. Stalls that had popped up by Damascus's Umayyad Mosque after the fall of Assad in December now sold the Saudi flag alongside the Syrian. Thanks for Saudi's role in helping arrange the Trump-Sharaa meeting. Oh, so Mohammed bin Salman was the one who was the one to sort of broker this. I guess because he wants to like bring in. It's all like Middle East political power playing for Mohammed bin Salman. He wants to be the sort of like regional hegemon within the Middle East, right? In comparison to Iran, because it's been like going quite beneficially for Iran recently, with the Saudis kind of being left behind, and now with moves like this with Bashar al-Assad being toppled, that's a significant slip in terms of regional sort of hegemon status within the Middle East for Iran in particular, also for the Russians. For 15 years, the world had this picture of us Syrians as refugees. Now they see us as we are. You can finally see light, and you can see hope. Yeah, said Hossam Al-Khwali, 50, the owner of a handicraft shop in Damascus's old city. Behind Khwali was a wall filled with homemade mirrors and boxes inlaid with Damascus's famed mother of pearl. It was rare that he sold pieces these days, he said, as Syria had few tourists over the last 15 years. Trump and Sharaa's meetings seemed to him a sign that soon he might have plenty of visitors to sell to. Well, good for him. Get that bag, King. When Trump spoke last night, it was the first time in my life that I listened to any president in the world and began to clap. He's a great man. Really, he is a great man, Khwali said, smiling. Well, I mean, let's be honest here. Trump's not doing this for any particularly altruistic reasons. You guys just happen to be getting a benefit out of this. It's, I want Trump Tower in Damascus. That's all I want. It's real estate for me, baby. Trump also seemed pleased with the meeting. He said he thought Sharaa was a real shot at holding Syria together, and that the Syrian president had agreed to eventually join the Abrahamic Accords, which would normalize Syrian ties with Israel. So yeah, our kind of idea that maybe, just maybe, this is going to be quite in line with the Israelis. That HTS might be quite in line with the Israelis. I don't know, but with the stuff that's going on with the Druze population, that kind of complicates things, right? Right? I think it's mostly trying to transition the Abrahamic Accords into more of a bulwark against Iran, I think. More than likely. Trump is exploiting the end of Assad's regime for this. Oh, 100%, boy meets many. That's not ridiculous to say. I don't think, I think Al-Sharaa in particular, and this is like a sort of discussion and like thoughts that we had before, a bunch of other political commentators had before. The question becomes is Al-Sharaa interested in trying to help build up and try to take Syria, have like a plan of vision for Syria for the future to make it stable? And seemingly with trying to, pull deals like this, going in the exact opposite direction of Bashar al-Assad, he's making deals with the West. It makes sense why. Syria under Bashar al-Assad was incredibly poor, isolated, and steeped in terms of in civil war for the past 20 some odd years, for a very long time, and Syria and Syrians have been suffering as a result of this. So, similar to what happened with the Warsaw Pact, why would you want to make a deal with the devil of the old when you can make a deal with the devil of the new? Does that kind of make sense? You don't know exactly what you're gonna get, but it was better than the devil that you used to know. So you'd rather make a deal with the devil that you don't know. Because we all know, like, Syria has quite a lot of oil reserves, so the West is going to be interested in that in particular. That's more than likely the reasoning why. But, you know, if Syria ends up benefiting from it, then I guess that's, like, as good of as an outcome as you're going to get. That's all you can really do, unfortunately. But, what? The United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco signed the U.S. brokered accords in 2020. I am ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria to give them a fresh start, Trump told the GCC. It gives them a chance for greatness. The sanctions were really crippling, very powerful. According to a White House spokesperson, Trump urged Sharaa to deport Palestinian terrorists, help the U.S. against the Islamic State, and to deal with the country's remaining chemical weapons stock. So, bunch of like standard sort of like U.S. fucking demands. What the fuck do they mean by Palestinian terrorists? I guess there's a bunch of people in Hamas, I guess, sort of sheltering in exile in Syria or something. I mean, is that why they're attacking and harassing the Druze population? We all know that, again, the Israelis are not big fans of this in particular because they want to use this as a cynical opportunity for a greater Israel project, obviously. But, you know, from what I do know, Israel has occupied some parts of fucking Syria, so, you know, whatever happens there is whatever happens there. We all know, like, the cynical use the Israelis are using this for, but, you know, I guess snubbing them is, that's fine, I guess. Fuck the Israelis. The meeting, which Trump said had come at the urging of Prince Mohammed and the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, was remarkable as the Trump administration had previously been wary of engaging with Sharaa, a former leader of the Islamist rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, who has sought to moderate his image in recent years. Sharaa previously led the Syrian wing of al-Qaeda before cutting ties with the group in 2016. It was the culmination of months of diplomacy by the new Syrian government, which overthrew Assad's regime at the end of last year, as well as their Turkish and Saudi allies, who believed FaceTime with Trump would help end Syria's international isolation. That is true. Again, like I said before, the dog in the race were the SDP, the YPJ, and the Kurds. Obviously, they look like they're probably going to get snubbed by these more like nationalists, but. What can you do? They ended up exploiting the situation, the weakening of Assad, the most, so it's just unfortunate that's how the Civil War ended up playing out. Well, it's time for all the Kurds to probably suffer more because of the Turks, is sort of what I'm seeing here is probably going to happen. But, you know, who knows exactly what will happen. Damascus had prepared to pitch to Trump that indeed that included access to Syrian oil, and there it is, reassurances of Israel's security, and a proposal to build a Trump Tower in Damascus. Yeah, these are the two things this motherfucker likes the most. We love oil, and we want it. I want a tower. That's what I want. Syria is also going to expand its kafala system to exploit African and South Asian peeps. Yup, more than likely. Just like any other of these Gulf states. Well, I mean, Syria's not really a Gulf state. It's a Middle Eastern state, but depending on, like, I mean, because they're pretty oil rich, right? There's a lot of oil in Syria. They have an opportunity to get very rich because of this. But more so, the Saudis are probably going to exploit this more with, like, Saudi Aramco and shit. Trump later arrived in Qatar for the second leg of his Middle East trip, where he oversaw the signing of a $96 billion order from Qatar Airways for up to 160 Boeing aircraft and a statement of intent for more than $38 billion in future defense investments. Sanctions were originally imposed on Assad after his bloody crackdown on peaceful protests in 2011, and the U.S. and other countries retained their economic embargo on Syria as they evaluated the new Islamist-led government in Damascus. Yeah, they wanted to see what Al-Sharaa's intentions were, because they were probably wary of initially of, like, well, this guy was a former Islamist. He's still, like, a nationalist. Like, sort of, like, pan-Arab nationalist. Can't really trust him. Who knows exactly what he could do. But he decided to go along with the route that probably appeases the West the most. And that is the diplomatic route. A key concern for the U.S. in Syria is the protection of religious minorities. The Trump administration released a sharply worded statement urging Damascus to protect minorities after attacks by pro-Assad forces sparked revenge killings of nearly 900 mostly Alawite civilians in northwest Syria in March. Yeah, that was a thing that also happened, right? A lot of sort of Islamic-based violence as well, which might have jeopardized the sort of diplomacy. The U.S. State Department had handed the Syrians a 12-point list of conditions and sanctions, which included protections of minorities in the U.S. maintaining the right to conduct strikes on what it considered terrorists on Syrian soil. I guess ISIS. I guess whatever remains of ISIS. That's all I can think of there. They were in the process of negotiating when Trump suddenly announced the lifting of U.S. sanctions on Tuesday night at an investment conference in Saudi Arabia. It came despite Israeli suspicions of the Islamist government in Damascus. Because like I said before, what Israel is just pretty much racist against anyone who is, Islamic, against any Arabs. That's the thing with Israel. They'll come up with any excuse in order to do strikes against Arab Muslims. Well, there's also the question of Hezbollah. Is there a lot of Hezbollah operations that happen within Syrian soil? Boy Meets Mini? I have no idea. Maybe. That could also be a concern as well. I mean, they are neighbors, right? Syria and Lebanon. But if I recall correctly, if I know anything about my geography, the area around Lebanon, where basically it was about Tyre and Sidon, it's very mountainous, very very mountainous. Just take a quick look at Google Maps. I haven't. Okay. Syria. Yes, Lebanon is a very mountainous country. So, this is where the border lies. Speaking of Sidon, a lot of it is just mountains, right? Hey, Tyre and Sidon. These are two old cities of antiquity right here. But Mount Hermon is right here. Big mountainous region. And it's in the southern parts of Lebanon, right? Could be a bunch of Hezbollah militants. This is probably where they hide a lot of their munitions as well, right? If I were to take a guess. I'm assuming, a bunch of mountains are probably also here. So a lot of places where, potential, people from Hezbollah could hide. The end of sanctions will be a step towards reintegrating Syria into the international economic system and a boost the battered economy, trying to rebuild after 14 years of civil war. The announcement of the end of sanctions was met with jubilation in Damascus. Beeping cars waving Syrian flags filled the country's capital. A traditional Syrian band played in the city's old quarter, the beats of drums accompanied by whooping cheers. Social media in Syria was meanwhile filled with videos of Trump dancing, his signature double fist bump set to Syrian anthems. Everyone is happy and in the streets. Thank God 1,000 times, thank God, said Omar Al-Nafa, who works in education. Syria's economy is battered from 14 years of war, with the UN estimating that more than 90% of its population lives in poverty. Much of the country's housing stock is destroyed, and basic services such as electricity and internet remain dysfunctional. Syria's new government set its ambitious goals to rebuild the country, but was hampered by severe economic sanctions. Under U.S. sanctions, Syria had no access to the international SWIFT banking system, and international businesses were reluctant to trade with the country for fear of falling foul of the U.S. Treasury. Nafa said it will take some time for it to be actually implemented, but hopefully will help the economy. Yeah, that's the end of that. So yeah, I've said this comparison before, but I think this is extremely analogous to, well, Eastern Europe after the fall of the Soviet Union. I think that's pretty much a more or less sort of like one-to-one comparison. I think, yeah, I would say that's more or less just a one-to-one sort of comparison. The devil that they used to know, Iran and Russia, I've also said this before. History does not very often repeat itself, but it likes to rhyme. It likes to rhyme, and this is another one of those instances where, quite literally, the Warsaw Pact, the former Warsaw Pact states, decided instead of going along with whatever bullshit Russia would offer with them, because they don't like the Russians because of how they were treated under the Warsaw Pact, they decided to go more pro-Western as a result. Now, I mean, we could talk about like shock therapy and all this stuff. Obviously, that doesn't really change the fact that the East Europeans were willing to take a risk and say like, I think we would rather take our chances with the West, broadly speaking, in terms of like some sort of like semblance or opportunity of like at success, rather than going with the devil that we do know in the Russians, right? I think the exact same sort of scenario played out here. I think Al-Sharaa pretty much recognizes that we can get into the good graces of the West through Saudi Arabia and Turkey and potentially get back on in their good graces into the international economy and be able to sort of rebuild their GDP. Now, obviously, after the sort of shock therapy, we don't know if that's going to be the policy that's gone with here. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? After the shock therapy period was over in all the East European countries that used to be a part of the Warsaw Pact, their economies were starting to grow. So it was a lot of pain in a very short amount of time, but now their economies are growing. This is true. Like, you can even look at Romania's economy. It's growing. So like the shock period is more or less over from there. Who knows? And this is just like speculation here. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We just have to wait and see over the next couple of months at this point. With Syria, I have a feeling that perhaps something similar could happen. A lot of short-term pain, but eventually, once the shock and the shock therapy is over, they're going to start to see their GDP grow, and there's going to be like economic prosperity and stuff like that. I mean, they're mostly going to be busy with rebuilding, right? Because, I don't know, most of the the basic services are just completely dysfunctional. Not like defunct, dysfunctional. They're pretty hampered. So pretty much all we can really say at this point is this is certainly like a sort of former Warsaw Pact situation where the Syrians or Al-Sharaa in particular is essentially saying like, we're going to take a chance with the devil that we don't know in comparison to the one that we do know. And that is the sort of sphere of influence of the Russians and the Iranians. Because we do know, broadly speaking, that the Russians, I believe they still have an air base in Syria. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with that, but that might be in jeopardy, potentially. But all we can really do at this point is just kind of like hold on, wait and see what happens in the next couple of months, because everything that I'm saying here is just like kind of like analogy and sort of just like speculation. That's pretty much all I can really say about this. Is Al-Sharaa like interested seemingly in trying to rebuild his country? Yes. Are there potential associated consequences with the route that he may be taking? Absolutely. I don't think that's ridiculous to say. But at the very least, it's probably going to be better than whatever was being offered by Bashar al-Assad. So if we're taking like the sort of a very strict like utilitarian sort of calculus here, it's seemingly that Al-Sharaa for the time being, albeit like not ideal, I would have preferred like the Syrian Democratic Forces or the Kurds to be able to like be the ones on top, or like have the Kurds be able to carve out a independent Kurdistan, at least for the time being. It seems like for all of the potential ways the Syrian civil war could have played out, HTS being the ones that ended up winning out in the end seems to have been like about as ideal as it could have gotten, because it was crazy, just that blitzkrieg, man, how they just like completely plowed through the pro-Assad forces. It was pretty wild. But yeah, all we can really do at this point is just kind of wait and see what happens, see what plays out, and pretty much just go from there, to be honest.